Hi, my name is Kendall Ross, and I'm going to be giving the government whip speech today. Just a brief roadmap of what I'll be doing. I'll be giving two questions, clarifying questions for today's round to show why the government team, specifically closing government, won today's round on the motion of international adoption. Starting off with the first question on which side is better for individual countries when we're looking at the long term. What we hear coming out of opening government is this point about how international adoption allows citizens from developed countries to take children from developing countries so that they, even though it takes away their potential to add to the economic prosperity of that country, they no longer have that chance when they're adopted from someone from a developed country. The opposition counters this by saying that no, children who are leaving these countries wouldn't have been able to contribute very much to their home countries because they would have been raised in an environment like an orphanage that would have lacked the resources to be able to bring them up in a way that they would have been able to provide very much. So they're going to be better moving to a developed country where they would be with a family who had the resources to pay for things like education. We think that on our side of the house, the removal of these children and their potential is very detrimental, not only to the children themselves, removing them from that culture, but it's also detrimental to the state as a whole, the state of these developing countries. What we see is that when children from developing countries are adopted by citizens of developed countries, it does two things. The first thing it does is perpetuates the cycle of the savior complex that we hear about coming out of the opening government, that demoralizes developing countries and makes developing countries believe that they can't survive without developed countries stepping in to save them and to make everything okay. The second thing it does is perpetuate the cycle of economic instability. Not only are we taking potential away from developing countries when we adopt children from there, but we're becoming complacent in other strategies that we could use to approach the issues that we see facing developing countries. So instead of actually looking into the problems that we see within, such as the foster or the orphanage system, developed countries are simply adopting people from developing countries and then walking away like there are no other problems or things that we could address within the country. And then we leave feeling like developed countries have somehow solved every issue within developing countries. So we overall become very complacent in the things that we could do, and it just perpetuates this cycle where developing countries aren't able to leave this arena of economic instability. So when we're looking at this question of which is going to be able to provide in the long term, we think that in the long term, when we allow for not international adoption, but for other means, we think that countries are going to be able to solve for issues within their own countries, such as structural reform within things like domestic orphanages, and solve for other systematic issues that cause and lead to this need for adoption in the first place. We think that this is a much better solution than other quick solutions, like having citizens from developed countries step in to adopt children from developing countries, while then ignoring the needs of their own countries and then just going into developing countries and ignoring other cultural factors. This brings us to our second clarifying question today, which is which side is going to be best for all children? We think on the government side today that the harms of international adoption are far greater than the need of international adoption, and what we see coming out of bottom government is that we also end up overlooking the need for domestic adoption, which is what my partner brings to you. We think that yes, like opening opposition brings up issues like human trafficking and other problems that do occur in other arenas that isn't technically unique to international adoption. We think that yes, they are heightened because of things like international adoption. Up and down the GovBedge, we've told you these stories about the harms that come from international adoption, like the commodification of children being kidnapped and sold through this front of international adoption. And because it's such a popular market and something that so many people from developed countries want to be a part of. Obviously, we think that these things are harmful on their own, like things like human trafficking. We think they're even more harmful when we start to think about what we're perpetuating when we start to look only to children in the international adoption system instead of children in the foster system in our own countries. My partner brings this to you as his substantive point in his speech about how we need to focus more on domestic adoption instead of focusing only on international adoption. Because what we see throughout the entire opposition case is we hear things about the importance of family, the importance of helping others in their own social mobility through children who may be orphans. But specifically children who are orphans in these developing countries, because the opposition believes that parents who are adopting in developing countries who are from developed countries will have the means to make the children from developing countries' lives so much better. We think that family is important, yes, but what we've shown you in closing government is that these things can be done through domestic adoption without the added harms that we see through things that come from international adoption, like human trafficking that was brought up by opening government, that comes specifically from international adoption. We think that a lot of these things, people can still be helped, people can still have the means for social mobility through domestic adoption. We think that a lot of the problems that we see within domestic adoption are more of a problem with resources than a problem of not wanting to adopt within their own country, in orphanages and things like that. We think that we can provide these resources within our own countries while maintaining our individual culture and helping within our own community in our own state. We think that this is going to be better for all children, not just those abroad, because we're eliminating the issues that we see with international adoption. So when the round comes to close, what we're getting out of government, and specifically closing government, is that the government provides long-term solutions for these individual states, and it provides better outcomes for adoptive children in the long run. And it is for these reasons that we are very proud to propose. Thank you.